Hello and welcome to a special edition of KQED Newsroom about Bay Area innovators. I'm Thuy Vu. From Silicon Valley tech giants to world-class research universities, the Bay Area is home to big thinkers and groundbreaking technologies. Today we'll hear from engineers, entrepreneurs, and a scientist who are creating new products and services to help solve problems here and around the world. One innovator is helping low-income individuals get interest-free loans while building up their credit. Two young women who met at Stanford are helping girls get excited about engineering through toys that spark the imagination. Another Bay Area entrepreneur is harnessing technology to help distribute food to thousands of hungry people in the Bay Area. But first, we start with the world of science. This September, Stanford University professor Manu Prakash was one of 4 Bay Area people to win a prestigious Genius Grant from the MacArthur Foundation. He was recognized, among other things, for creating a microscope out of paper that costs less than $1 to make. It's now being used in 130 countries. Prakash is also developing tools to track how diseases are spread in the tropics and the U.S. Physical biologist and inventor Manu Prakash demonstrated one of his famous inventions here in our studio. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, congratulations to you. Do you feel anything different? Are you doing anything differently now that you're officially a MacArthur genius?
I don't know about the genius, but I'm really humbled to be recognized this way in my scientific career. I'm very thrilled and excited, and I think there is a lot more work to be done, so I'm just putting my head down and getting stuff done.
Well, your research falls into the field of physical biology. What is that exactly?
So I'm a physicist by training, but I think a lot about biological problems very broadly. So I bring new sets of tool sets from the field of physics into biology. All of life forms around on this planet still obey laws of physics. And so it's very valuable to think in that perspective and ask ourselves questions. So what are the limitations? What fundamentally do these life forms change and do to enable what they're capable of? So in the end, physical biology is a lens into biology, but from a physicist's eye.
And in fact, when you were in the field, one of the limitations you noticed was the ability to view things on site, because you need a microscope to view a lot of very, very tiny things. So you've created a lot of fascinating products and concepts, but you're perhaps best known for what's called the FullScope microscope. When you brought it here, tell us about it.
I did. So FullScope is an origami microscope that you fold together from a flat sheet of paper. It takes a couple of minutes to fold.
And this is how it comes, right? In just a sheet of paper, you pop it out.
You pop little parts, you put them together, you assemble them. So this is the finished FullScope. You hold it with your 2 hands, you move around, and then you focus with your thumbs. You can take any traditional glass slide, for example, and insert it in a FullScope. So this is a little bug that I just caught right here on your table, and I insert it and we'll be able to actually watch it live. You hold it with both hands, and this is panning, so now I'm moving around, kind of like walking in a city, except it's a microscopic city. And then the focus is just the tension in my hand. And what that does is generates a little flexure that allows me to move the lenses up and down. So I'm going to pass this. You hold here and here and just take a look. And then to focus it.
Oh, is that the bug I'm seeing?
That is the bug that you're seeing. You see the little legs?
Yes.
They got a little squashed.
It looks really gross close up now that it's been magnified 140 times.
That's correct. And what you're looking at are the mouth parts. Right there are the mandibles. We can tell it's an insect. It's got 6 legs. Right there, you see the little mechanosensitive hairs.
Wow, and it costs just about 55 cents to make?
That's correct, yeah.
That's
it took
amazing.
a long time for us to really squeeze the cost down in manufacturing and come up with new ways of thinking about optics to be able to do that.
So you then went on to distribute about 50,000 of these FullScopes to 135 countries. Why is it so important to you to make sure that as many people can get their hands on this as possible?
I grew up in India, so I know and understand what it means not to have access, and especially not to have access to science. So it was very important from the beginning that we asked this question much more broadly. And frankly, if you look at all the challenges that we face, be it climate change, environmental challenges, biodiversity, diseases, we need to engage a much broader group of community, not just scientists, in the discourse of science. We just announced we'll be releasing 1 million FullScopes by summer 2017.
1 million?
That's correct.
Wow.
Yeah, we've committed ourselves to getting these tools out there.
Share with me a couple of the best stories of the ways that people have used your FullScope in unexpected ways.
Yeah, I think this is the most humbling experience of this entire project has really been is once you get the tools to people and get out of the way, they do incredible things. There's an example of a pharmacist who's used this to detect fake drugs. There are beekeepers who are using them to identify diseases in their bee colonies. There are farmers in India who have used them to identify pests, and you could isolate that specific plant that actually got infected. There are numerous examples of disease diagnostics. A fun story is somebody used it to detect fake currency. And I think my primary force when I'm thinking about these sets of tools is I'm just waiting for these ideas to pop in from around the world and people getting connected to each other. Because the tool is exactly the same. When I do an experiment here, or when a kid does an experiment in Namibia, another kid in Kansas and another kid in Boston will actually be able to replicate that experiment with the same tool. So everybody builds on top of each other.
Were you always like this? Have you always been tinkering? Have you always been passionate about science?
I think I don't know a world other than science. This is how I grew up. And at that same time, that tinkering has a lot of value personally to me because it allows me to express myself. But I do very strongly believe tinkering has value for everybody else. When we talk about science education and the challenges we face, only if we accepted the idea that you're allowed to tinker, I think it'll make a big difference.
What's the next big problem you're working on solving?
I think there are a lot of big problems. One that I've been focusing quite a lot on is figure out how to track mosquitoes out in the field. We've been building new tools to do mosquito surveillance where citizens can engage.
Is that to help cut down on malaria? Or?
It helped cut down malaria, Zika, chikungunya, dengue, many different diseases that are carried by mosquitoes, but empowering citizens to actually engage in the process of understanding what mosquitoes do when we're not watching.
Manu Prakash, recipient of the MacArthur Genius Award, thank you for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
And now we hear from another Bay Area innovator who also won a 2016 MacArthur Genius Grant. José Quiñonez is a financial services expert and the founder and CEO of San Francisco-based Mission Asset Fund. His organization helps immigrants and low-income individuals build good credit through a unique program that taps into a long-used informal model of community lending. He also recently brought together nearly 50 national organizations for a summit in San Francisco on non-traditional lending. Welcome and congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Your nonprofit Mission Asset Fund really builds upon a community-based lending model, often known as lending circles. And this is a group where people all contribute to a pot of money and then they lend money to each other. Why did you choose to focus on this kind of financial model?
Yeah, the reason why is because when we were starting our work, the conventional wisdom at the time was, they had this notion that people were somewhat just financially illiterate, that they just didn't know enough, or that they were doing everything wrong, and then they just needed us to kind of go in there and help them, set them straight, right? And then, so we sort of deviated from that. Say, actually, if you really look at what's happening, particularly in immigrant communities, there really are financially savvy individuals that, they know more about interchange rates than any of us. I mean, they're managing budgets across households, across countries. So they really are doing a lot of great things, but we never give them credit for any of that. And one of the things that we found out was that, people actually do come together and lend and save money together. And so we wanted to lift that up to sort of start our conversation, there. and then help them use that practice as a way to actually get into the financial mainstream.
Yeah. And a lot of cultures have this, Latino cultures,
Right.
Asian cultures, my own Vietnamese culture, it's called
Right.
hui, lots of
Hui.
different terms,
That's
right?
exactly right.
And then once you do this, you take it to the next step though. You formalize this with financial institutions so that
Right.
the participants can have some kind of credit history, so they can have relationships with established financial institutions.
That's right.
How do you do that?
Right. So the first thing was recognizing it as like bona fide financial information to sort of say this is phenomenal what people are lending, borrow with each other, but because it's informal, nobody really knows about it except the people within that group. And so what we did was basically formalized informality, right? We formalized it in such a way that we got, all the participants had to sign a promissory note that basically says, I, Jose, promise to pay $100 for the next 10 months. And then that promissory note, sort of like the legal document that transforms it into a viable, visible financial product. And then also gives MAF the ability to then service that loan, collect the payments and make the loan distributions, and also to report that information to the credit bureaus. Because one of the things that we found out early enough was that no matter what we did in terms of helping people develop their financial security, if we did not help them build or improve their credit scores, we knew that it was all going to be talk, right? Because we know that without having the credit score, the credit report, it's really impossible to do anything in our world today. I mean, without the credit report, people can't even get apartments, or insurance, or in a lot of cases can't even get jobs, right? So we wanted to address that barrier and head on. And so by us reporting it to the credit bureaus, we're helping them build
new
credit score.
lives.
That's right.
You have an interesting background yourself. Speaking of building new lives, you were 9 years old when you immigrated from Mexico into California after
Right.
first losing your father
right.
and then your mother. How has the immigrant experience shaped your work and your motivation to do this work?
I am an immigrant. I came to this country as a 9-year-old boy, undocumented, and lived, in the shadows of society, fearful of deportation, and that was even taught to me. It's like, don't say a word, don't speak up, make yourself invisible, because we were fearful of that. And so that shaped me in a great deal. But thankfully for me and my family, we were able to get amnesty through that in 1986 law that President Reagan signed into law. And because of that, I was unshackled in a way to basically, live out, the rest of my life here. And so I continued on with my education, went to UC Davis, went to Princeton, worked in Congress. But I never forgot that experience of being in the shadows. And I knew that that there's more to the story that we have of people in the shadows, because I know that people are there are people that are hardworking, people that are dignified, people that really just want an opportunity to really live out the true human and economic potential. So I've dedicated my life, my career, to actually do that for them. And thankfully, through math, through lending circles, I was able to find a very tangible way of actually helping people build their financial security.
What's the default rate like?
Yeah, over the course of the past 8 years, we've managed, over like $6.2 million in loans. We've helped over 6,000 people, and the repayment rate is 99.3%, meaning
Wow.
that default rate is 0.7%. There's a lot of reason why that happens, because people, this is their money. This is the relationships that they're holding true.
They're personally and emotionally invested.
Exactly.
Do you follow up with the participants after they leave the fund? How has this transformed lives?
Yeah, we do follow up with them. I mean, we have a lot of clients that kind of come, and they have a second or third lending circle with us. One story that I always go back to, we had a client who moved from Chicago to San Francisco after leaving her abusive husband, and she came to San Francisco to start her life anew with 2 kids. But because she didn't have that credit report, she couldn't find an apartment. Nobody would rent to her, so she was essentially homeless with her kids, living in couches, or sometimes sleeping on hallways. But once she got a credit report, she was able to get that apartment, and she came to our office to deliver the news, and she was literally in tears, because her life was transformed because of that.
All right, real quickly, you get a grant of $625,000. What are you going to do with it?
Well, I'm going to go to Disneyland. No, I'm not going to do
And
that.
then what?
And then what? No, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, this is it's a phenomenal recognition the resources, but this is sort of providing like a jet fuel to our work. So I'm thankful that I want to continue to do this work, for years to come.
All right, José Quiñonez, MacArthur Fellowship Award winner and also leader of the Mission Asset Fund. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
From lending circles to the classroom, our next guests are also making an impact on society by shattering stereotypes. Alice Brooks and Bettina Chen first met as Stanford engineering grad students who went on to create a startup called Ruminate. Their company makes award-winning building toys geared towards getting girls excited about science, technology, engineering, and math. But the toys must also be fun to engage this next generation of female scientists and engineers. Welcome to you both, Alice and Bettina.
Thank you.
Well, Alice, what made you decide to start Ruminate?
Well, I studied mechanical engineering in college, and there weren't many other women around. And when Bettina and I met in graduate school, that was one of the first things we talked about, why there weren't more women in our classes. And we realized that we were both inspired by things that we did when we were younger to love engineering.
Bettina, was the same for you? Did you have access to building toys that you felt were friendly and interested you when you were little?
Yeah, so for me, I played with my brother's hand-me-down building toys. I played with a lot of Lego and Lincoln Logs, and looking at the toys out there for girls today when we were starting the company, we really saw those were toys marketed only to the boys, and we saw this gap for girls and saw a great opportunity for us to introduce something.
And why did you pick toys as opposed to doing something else? There are a lot of classes out there for young girls now, for example, to become interested in STEM. Why toys?
Well, we want to start even earlier, before those classes, before circuits and math problems come up in the classroom when girls are 5, 6 years old. We wanted them to get comfortable building, so they would develop spatial skills, get comfortable with circuits, so that when those things came out in the classroom, they'd already be excited about those.
So then to woo girls, what separates your products from all the other more traditional construction toys out there?
Well, one of the exciting things is that we bring in a lot more technology into our product. So our very first generation, we had circuits. You could put a light together, you could put a motor together, so you have something that spins. Maybe you make a fan or a merry-go-round. And that's a really exciting moment for girls when they first put that together and see that they themselves have built something that moves. That's just so empowering. And now this year we introduced a new technology called R-Power, where you can actually control everything from your phone. So it's even more cool things you can do with the circuits, and we can introduce a lot more advanced technology with that as well.
Let's see how it works.
So we built a house here. We found that a lot of girls already know about doll houses. So as a hook, we introduce them to the dollhouse, but then they actually design and construct the whole thing. So they build the structure, they design furniture, couches, they could put in stairs, and then they put in circuits to really make it come alive. So you can have your fan, you can put in lights. It's really all about creating their own world. So they're the ones that are in control.
And Bettina, how does this work when you're operating it from your smartphone?
Yeah, so we have one set up here. This is R-Power, and it connects to your phone via Bluetooth, and you can do a lot of different things. You can turn on the lights. You can set the lights to blink if you want. You can turn on the motor, so you can control how fast the motor spins. So if you don't want the animals to fly off, slow it down. You can change the direction of the motor, so you can imagine having an elevator that goes up and back down, or a car that you can drive around. So it really opens up a lot more customization for girls.
Do you think girls learn and play differently from boys? Is it important to sort of marry the storytelling with the building components?
From our testing, we found that girls were loving playing with any circuits toys that we brought, but they were putting them into their own story. So we wanted to give them the chance to tell their own stories and make them actually real. And by giving them the context of something they've already seen in their other toys, we're not the first influence. So we know they've already played with a lot of other gendered toys, but by doing something they're comfortable with, then we can get them hooked in and playing.
So while you were both growing up, were there things that happened that you felt discouraged you from trying to pursue careers in STEM?
Well, in school, in elementary school, middle school, high school, I think there was always that element of, oh, you're the girl that really likes science and math. But when it really hit me was when I was at college at MIT, and I was studying mechanical engineering, and people would say to me, oh, you're not really studying mechanical engineering, or you're not really an MIT student. And that kind of attitude, that's making women question themselves.
Did you question yourself when that happened?
No, I said there's something wrong with them.
And Bettina, were there any discouraging things that happened as you were coming through the school system?
one of the biggest things is when I went to Stanford, coming from Caltech, and every time I would meet someone new in grad school and they'd be like, oh, what are you studying? And I'd be like, electrical engineering. And they kind of give me this weird look and like, kind of like back away, like, oh, maybe I don't want to talk to this girl after all. And it's like, well, it shouldn't be abnormal for a girl to want to do engineering. It should be cool and it's fun and it's really exciting. And having that be the norm is going to be really important.
Well, thank you both, Alice Brooks and Bettina Chen with Ruminate, just 27 years old and already a startup that's sold under your belts. Congratulations to you both. A fresh approach to thinking about a problem can be just what's needed to solve it, even one as big as hunger. A young entrepreneur, Kamal Ahmad, thinks that hunger is a problem of logistics, not scarcity. So she created a startup, Copia, that combines mobile technology and on-the-ground logistics to redistribute excess food to those who need it the most. It's also a win for the environment by keeping tons of food out of landfills. So nice to have you here.
So nice to be here. Thank you so much.
How did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, so a few years ago, I was walking down Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley. I was a student there, and I encountered a homeless man begging for food, and something about him compelled me to stop and invite him to join me for lunch. And during lunch, he sat right across from me, just scarfing down his food. So he was really hungry, and in between bites, he shared a story. He said, my name is John. I just came back from my second tour in Iraq. I've been waiting weeks for my VA benefits to kick in, and because they haven't, I haven't eaten in 3 days. And that really hit home for me. I mean, this is a veteran, someone who had given the most selfless sacrifice for our country, only to come home to face yet another battle. That was hunger and homelessness. And then adding insult to injury, right across the street, Berkeley's dining hall was throwing away thousands of pounds of perfectly edible food. And so it's this very stark reality of those who have and waste and those who are in need and starve, and those two people right across the street from one another. And what I realize is that's emblematic of a much larger problem, and that is in every single day in America, over 365 million pounds of perfectly edible food is wasted. And the paradox is that while all of this waste is happening, 1 in 6 Americans don't know where their next meal is coming from. So clearly it's not a lack of food that's the issue, it's just an inefficient distribution of it. This isn't a scarcity problem, it's just a logistics problem.
So then you figured out a way how to solve that logistics problem. How does Copia work?
Yeah, so Copia works. So imagine if you're Google and you have a bunch of food at the end of the day, you would take a picture of the food and you would say, we need it picked up by this time. It's automatically geolocated and it's sent to a virtual marketplace. And our algorithm on the back end will match that exact amount and type of food to the nearest nonprofits that can accept it at that day, at that time, in that quantity. And it'll dispatch our food hero to come pick up that food and then drop it off. And then as a full circle, we'll send back, the food managers photos and testimonials so they can see the impact that they made, along with data and analytics that will help them reduce future overpurchasing and disposal costs, as well as like an enhanced tax deduction receipt so that they can also see the financial savings that it made by just doing good that had the impact on their bottom line.
So how many businesses have signed on now, and how many people have you fed?
Yeah, so we're on our way to feeding 1 million people. We have hundreds of nonprofits and businesses that work through our platform. We're in 40 cities across the Bay Area, and we're always looking for more businesses, whether you're a grocery store, a corporation, a tech company, whatever you may be, everybody that has excess food, and then nonprofits as well. So we serve, from St. Anthony's, St. Vincent de Paul, Larkin Street Youth, Boys and Girls Club, the Delancey Street Foundation. So, a whole gamut of people that we serve.
What about the practical realities, though? Are there liability issues? Is it hard to convince businesses to sign on? What if someone gets sick from eating their food?
Yep. Great question. That's the 90% of the reason why businesses don't already donate their food is because of fear of liability. So there's 5 different ways we protect businesses from liability. Number 1 is all nonprofits that work with us sign hold harmless indemnity agreements that directly indemnify us as well as the food provider from any liability. It also puts the onus of responsibility to reject the food onto them. Congress in 1996 passed the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act that protects all donors from any liability. Since 1996, the number of claims and lawsuits that have been filed against any business or organization or individual has been 0.
You have to show intent to harm, right?
Exactly,
yeah.
And that's very hard to prove. We also have a $5 million insurance policy that protects every donation that happens through our platform, as well as all of our drivers. No one's a volunteer. We are a for-profit company, so none of our drivers are volunteers.
And you've employed a lot of veterans.
Exactly, a lot of veterans. Exactly, as a lot of the recipients of our food have now come on as drivers, as food handlers. So it's not just a handout, but a hand up as well.
So Copia started out as a nonprofit. You're now a for-profit.
Yes.
Why did you decide to make that move?
We decided because, you know, we're solving the world's largest and dumbest problem, we believe. And like, we are for-profit for scale because we want to scale incredibly fast. I mean, this is the first time in human history that we can solve some of the world's largest problems. And with technology, we can do it better and faster than ever before. And for us to spend 90% of our time fundraising, it just doesn't make sense. And to continuously go and
right.
you know, it makes more sense to use technology to develop and put those resources behind it to actually solve this. And you know what, right now we're moving the most perishable resource there is, which is food. And we're developing our technology to be so much more sophisticated that it can then, you know, redistribute medicine, medical supplies, books, clothing, because it's not, you know, a lack of any resource. It's just an inefficient distribution of it. And so our logistics team and our technology team can work together to actually make this happen.
So how do you make money? Do you charge the businesses?
Yeah, so business, just like you would pay for composting or disposal, you would pay for us. It's a volume fee. And then in turn, we also provide you like receipts that actually give you, 200 to 400% return on your bottom lines, which is a cash benefit that you get back after our fees for businesses that do work with us. So it's basically you're getting money that you would have otherwise left on the table, or worse, in the trash. And you're getting that.
Can just anybody download the app?
Anyone can download the app. Yeah, it's on our iOS store. And any business, grocery store, company, KQED are all encouraged to participate.
How have people outside the Bay Area contacted you as well in terms of how to bring this platform to their countries? Because hunger, as you say, is a worldwide problem.
Yes. Thousands. I mean, so we've received over 60,000 requests already for global expansion, and from, senior government officials in Germany and Austria who are like, we want this platform, we'll pay for its expansion so we can help redistribute food and other resources to the Syrian migrants. Right? So when I was in a college a few years ago, I couldn't have possibly fathomed, a use case like that. But you take that, you take disaster relief, you take Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Katrina. I mean, there's so many resources that people need in real time that's already there. It just needs to move quicker and faster. And so we're really excited to see how this is going to expand and how it's going to evolve to really solve a problem that has existed since the beginning of time.
And we did not have time to get into this, but Komal, you're just 26 years old. You already spoke at the White House and at the United Nations this year about Copia. So congratulations to you.
Thank you so much.
Much luck to you. Really a wonderful idea.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Copia is now working with the San Francisco 49ers to reduce the football team's food waste, and the startup has plans to expand its services beyond Northern California. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from some of the Bay Area's top innovators. For more of our coverage, go to kqed.org/newsroom. I'm Thuy Vu. Thanks so much for watching.